All right, I am live here with Haley Temple from Mural. Welcome, Haley.
Hey, Douglas, thanks for having me on.
I,
So
I- I-
nice.
yes, 100%. Excited to talk with you about learning about learning.
Yes,
I love this. I love meta
very meta.
anything, and especially when it's about learning. In fact, metacognition is thinking about thinking. So, and it's one of the things that Eric Skogsberg and I have talked a lot about when we are designing our learning experience design courses. Metacognition is so important because if we don't step back and think about how people think, then we can't design great experiences for them to be in great thinking moments. So anyway, meta is fun and I love it. So tell me a little bit about your learning journey on just thinking about how to help folks learn more about Mural and support them on that journey to be more successful in these collaboration moments.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mural, I mean, to set the level set, Mural is a digital collaboration virtual whiteboard, right? And it's really, of course, you have to understand the features and you have to understand how they work and feel good about, okay, well, I know when I click this button, it does this, but it's also, and the complex part of it is it's really in service of getting people to accomplish a certain goal or a certain job. So people want to be able to have meetings, right? Especially right now, people are saying, I want to go have a meeting like we used to with whiteboards and sticky notes and everyone up collaborating and feeling really engaged. So it's it's a complex problem to solve because how do you teach somebody how to use the software, but then also think about on the layer on top of it, which is I need to, like, what is that job to be done? What is that goal? And I think my journey learning about learning is thinking about how to layer that in. And I think a lot of it, what I'm finding is it comes back to really like a human centered design approach, going through that. And so empathizing, getting that context for that, what that person's trying to solve, and going through and iterating on it and thinking about also storytelling. I mean, people love stories. We are storytelling creatures. So how do you create a compelling story that resonates with people and then also layers in the how to for in terms of features and best practices and things like that. So right now I'm working on untangling that and putting it into a journey that makes sense for people.
So two learning science kind of principles come to mind as I was hearing that. One is differentiated learning, and the other one's motivation. So if we don't differentiate for all of the different perspectives and needs that are showing up, and this is one myth that we run into is a lot of people think that there's different learning styles, and so Bob needs visual and Susan needs auditory, but the research shows that everybody needs it all. So if we don't have multi-sensory, we're not supporting everyone as best we can. And so differentiated learning just means that we're going to meet everyone where they're at. And then also to your point, like we need to think about motivation. So what is driving someone on this learning journey? And if we don't tap into that through story or through connection or through understanding, then it's going to be difficult to get them where they need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the differentiated, I mean, like you said, meeting them where they are, because that's been something on my mind, especially I was a customer of Murals before I joined Mural about a year and a half ago. And so I'm really comfortable and I mean, I wouldn't say I walk into every meeting and like, yeah, I got this, but everyone is different and everyone is exciting. But you have to remember that beginner's mindset of how it felt. And yesterday I was delivering a training and somebody said to me, I'm used to being at the board with flip charts and putting up the sticky notes and planning the session like this. And it really helped remind me of that beginner's mindset and where people are. They're, especially right now with COVID, people not being able to go in the office. I was mentioning earlier, they miss that experience. They're confident working in that in person setting. And how do we recognize that and appreciate that that's where people are and that's where they're comfortable, and then get them prepared to go on this journey to bring that experience into an online space? Because there are certain things that are similar in and that of course murals replicating, like the sticky notes and um, the notion of being able to follow people around the mural, but even that's extremely different. Like, for example, I don't have to tell people to follow me in an in-person meeting. I just, point to something and look at it. So being able to set that expectation and say, we know you're used to this. We celebrate that's where you're coming from. And now we're going to take you on a journey to and show you why this different approach or the next level online is different and why it's awesome.
Well, there's even multiple layers there too, right? Because there's the pure technical skill, and then there's the kind of the how, the approach, the methods, the the application component, right? How we're going to put the tools to use. But then there's a style component too that I think that has to be understood and embraced, because it looks like I'm frozen. I don't know if my audio is frozen or not, but
No, I can hear you.
oh, great. I'll just keep talking then.
Keep going.
There, there's a stylistic piece, which, I see some people treating the murals like just completely replacing their decks. I see some folks laying them out like a Candyland game. I see some folks like being much more just using it like a blank canvas with some subtle prompts and areas. And so there's so many different ways to use it stylistically that I think that's another hurdle for folks to get around. Well, and you see such a wide array of template kind of directions and choices. So I don't know. Is that something that I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
So to replay back, it's the different layers and the different possibilities and being able to, how do you point people in the right direction, or how do you reconcile the fact that there is a technical aspect and there's also the design aspect and there's also the collaboration aspect?
Yeah, I think that maybe the design aspect, I think design is subtly different than the style too, right? I mean, it's a design choice, but then even after you make that choice then you've got the aesthetics and the cleanup and the design element too. So I think there's quite a few hurdles for people to get over that I notice when they're first learning.
Yeah. And I think that, and this is actually like a fascinating thing to unpack too, is how do we give people, because that is overwhelming. Where do I start, basically? And if I lay out my mural this way, what is the impact going to be? And especially for people who are used to, it's comfortable staying in slide deck mode and just saying, I'm going to make an interactive, quote unquote, PowerPoint that just kind of shifts people through those decks, but I'm not actually going to invite people in to collaborate. I think I'm thinking about, for example, Dan Rowan Back of the Napkin, the idea that we give people some basic frameworks or basic layouts to work with, and then saying, if you choose this one, here's how you can expect to engage, or how the flow would work, and then where you can expect and invite people to collaborate in, because that's also a shift from a PowerPoint being not to, slides also. It's not just PowerPoint. It's not just like Microsoft. It's just that presentation style experience, and shifting people to say, no, you're going to invite people in and you're going to ask for their feedback, and that creates a great engaging experience for people. And doesn't that feel great to do that? So yeah, I think it's interesting having this conversation with you and thinking about that. Because it's, the technical, okay, then how do you do that? How do you build that mural? So yeah, there's so many different layers of it to unpack, which is my job is challenging and fun. I'm curious, Douglas, how have you, because I remember end of last year or beginning of 2020, this was not something top of mind. And then, of course, when COVID hit, having to shift all of your work and your practices into an online space. And maybe it's kind of interesting needing to do that makes you, and the constraints make you think about it. But what was your journey to to go from, oh, all our workshops are in person to online, and your approach?
Yeah, I think the journey was a little easier. And sorry about the video. I don't know. I've tried a few things to fix it, but as long
That's
as the
okay.
audio is working, we're good.
Yeah, it's great.
So yeah, the journey for me was really interesting because I think we were very privileged and lucky in the sense that we were already familiar with Mural. We were already using it for internal meetings and for smaller workshops. And what we had to do was repackage some of our longer workshops. We had to shift some of our in-person training to online, so that there was a lot of marketing. Like, you had to update landing pages and make people confident that, like, wait, is this going to be good, or what is this, another webinar? What is this? So that was just a lot of work to build up trust and confidence with folks, and then also repackage things. Whereas I had lots of colleagues and tons of folks in our facilitation community who have been coming every week to learn. Especially early on, we had hundreds of people, and now it's more like dozens. But early on, people were really just like, "Oh, what do we do? What is going on?" And so we thought that's why we held the Thursdays, so we could help people just have a moment outside of a client engagement or something that had critical business value, where they could experiment and play around with it. And then, and I guess for us, it's just been mostly the stylistic stuff. Like, how do we play with how we use the mural and when it shows up, and do we, because we've been playing around, it's easy to just put everything in there. So we've been playing with, like, what if we take a bunch of stuff out? What if we split the middle? And so we're just kind of been dialing it in and out and playing with that and seeing how that shifts the dynamic, because, people do behave different when they're staring at, they're typing and staring, versus when they're, even you tell them to turn the video off and just talk, or like, or they're in a small group with video on. So just playing around with some of those elements, I think, is fascinating. And I'm not convinced there's one right way, but I'm not a super dogmatic person, except when it comes to values like co-creation and inclusion. But anyway, I don't know. Does that align with things you've heard or seen or experienced yourself?
Yeah, I agree that, I mean, there's definitely there's not one right way to do it, because especially I've heard people say, oh, like, cameras have to be on at all times. Cameras have to be on. But then you also think about, yeah, some people, it's really overwhelming to be looking at themselves the entire time, or somebody doesn't have great internet connection, especially thinking about, like, Mural has a global reach, and meetings have to have a global reach. And if somebody has their video on that slows and they have limited bandwidth, then that's going to impact their ability to be part of the conversation. So as people, I mean, in meetings and running meetings, it definitely, hey there you are.
I'm back.
It definitely, as someone running meetings and trainings, and I'm thinking about, like, your control the room, that aspect, it's so much harder to control, quote unquote, control the room, because I think when you're in person, you don't have so many variables that to manage. And now it's okay, well, we have to think about, people's setup, people's bandwidth, people's access to our technology, their confidence using the technology, their, I've talked like tech fluency sometimes too, just in general. Like,
Yeah, the tech fluency thing is funny one too, because we found that we've started to do an orientation before our workshops to get people up to speed, and then even in the workshop, there's extra policing and things, right? Because if I take a stack of post 3x5 stickies that are yellow and I put them on the tables, no one's gonna accidentally grab a 3x3 blue sticky because I didn't put them on the table.
Right.
I police that by setting my initial conditions. But with a tool where they can create any color, any shape, any size, and they can make it gigantic because they don't understand zooming, even though you told them 4 times.
Yeah.
Then that stuff as a facilitator have to manage. And so I've just made sure to make that just part of the dialogue and really drive it home. And when people were struggling Zooming, one pro tip that I kept forgetting and even though I knew the feature was there, I kept forgetting to use it in this way. But you can have people, you can go to where someone's working and tell them to click on you rather than trying to summon everyone. Say, all right, I've got it set. Click on my, and that's a very simple instruction. Rather than trying to get them to really master Zooming, just click on me once I've got it set to the viewport they need. So just, I don't know, just learning little tricks as a facilitator, just like you practice years and years in the room, getting people to like little prompts, little nudges, having chimes, all these little things you have to build up, and and it takes practice, and just got to get in there and do it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that tech fluency notion. Like I think if Linda Baker and I are thankfully awesome friends, thanks to Control the Remote Summit last year. And she's introduced that notion to me a lot, especially because I mentioned coming from, I work in tech and these online sessions all the time, but somebody coming in from not having that environment before, and then layer on top of it, now you're a facilitator or you're someone who's been hired to run a meeting, and just layer that complexity on top of it. So that's a great, I'm going to use that.
It's really, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I discovered that one recently and it's been really great. So we do have a question here. Let's see oh wait, David Matthew wrote twice. Well, let's just do this. Look at this first one here. So what are you seeing as the biggest challenges for doing facilitation with a virtual whiteboard tool versus being in person? What new jobs to be done struggles have popped up? So we talked a little bit just now about the tech fluency.
Yeah.
I've found that having what we call them a scribe, some people call them a producer or a technical facilitator or just a co-facilitator, but we have someone that's dedicated to just helping make sure mural's organized, make sure to run the breakout rooms. That way the facilitator is in charge of time. And although that sometimes we might have the scribe set the timer, we're ultimately in charge of the flow. And if we need to lean in and ask the group to move on to something else, or like prompt them or nudge them or make sure they're on task and at the right elevation. I don't know. What else have you seen, Haley?
Yeah. So I always, when I learned facilitation, it was always kind of the two in a box approach. So even if I really don't like facilitating alone for that reason, because you're trying to juggle so many things at once. So even if I was in person, I would say, okay, well, if I'm the one facilitating and managing the conversation, I do need somebody in the background, either putting up flip charts or synthesizing something or getting snacks, whatever it is, then we kind of trade off. So thankfully that, to your point, has carried into the online space. But yeah, you're managing much more of the behind the scenes timers and the technical setup and the scribing. So the biggest challenge is in facilitation. I think the mindset, I mean, I don't know if this is the biggest, like the mental model shift and getting people to think about, and this is even for a facilitator too, is, I'm used to doing this in this way in person. And why do I have to your point, do so much extra coaching and extra time? And I think this is specific, not only for a whiteboard tool, but for technology tools in general. Like, I think this is why setting those ground rules and stuff in a meeting is important, because in-person meetings, for example, if somebody had a question for me as a facilitator or for one of us running the meeting, they can just kind of like pull aside and tap on our shoulder and chat with us. But where do you give people those opportunities? And you have to think about, okay, well, that's actually something that's part of a meeting or collaboration experience. How do I give people a sense of how to do that online now? So for example, like thinking about using the chat or private messaging, and needing to be a lot more present to all of the different dynamics and needs that happen when you're collaborating online, and how do you meet people there? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's a ball of wax.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, like there's not one right way to do it either. So that's that's even more challenging.
I
But
know,
David, I'm
especially
curious
for
what yours is too, if you want to put it.
yeah, yeah. Although with the latency on live streaming, we might be off the air by the time he pops in
Mm,
another comment. But to that point, it is time for us to go. So
oh, wow.
yeah, live streams go fast, don't they? Um, let's see. So before we do though, I want to leave you with one question. What is one stupid rule we should kill?
One stupid rule we should kill. And this is not, is this in the context of meetings or it can be any?
Whatever. I'd love to talk about making meetings better, but whatever rule you think we should kill, I think people will find it fascinating regardless.
I don't know if it's a rule, but I think it's I think it's an expectation. I think that I don't know. I think facilitators, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to perform and succeed. And I think that the pressure doesn't have to be on us. And it's so easy to say, but to your point, like giving other people the tools and capability to interact and engage, I think takes a little bit of that like performing pressure off. And I don't think it's a rule per se, but I think it's just a feeling that we have. I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah, I think too, one there's definitely this sense sometimes of perfection, or I don't want people to, because you want to, this is a profession and we want to hone our craft and we want to be good at it. And so I see facilitators having an aura of or just this fear of failure and like wanting to present like they're experts or proficient, etc. And I don't know, I think a lot humility goes a long way, and letting people see you fail, and being able to dust off and stand back up again, and the group will be with you a lot more tightly because they see you as human.
Yeah, and then to bring it all back around, that's also a learning experience. I mean,
Right.
you're able to your point, like unpack and reflect and say, okay, what am I going to do next time that's going to make the next experience even better?
100%. All right. Well, thanks so much for taking some time to live stream with me today. It's been a pleasure as always. Haley Temple.
Thanks, Douglas. Have a good day.